Tanya?
Good evening, Brandon.
Good evening.
So I will let you know that I do not see Mr. Grable in the waiting room yet. Maybe if it's okay, we give him another minute or two before we get the meeting started.
Has anyone heard from Bill? I'm wondering.
I have not heard from him. I am going to send him an email right now just to check in that way. But I would suggest we go ahead and begin the meeting.
Who's that, Jane?
I have not heard from him. I am going to send him an email right now just to check in that way. But I would suggest we go ahead and begin the meeting.
We've been in touch with him, and we're sure he's coming.
Jane?
No.
Yeah, he's coming.
I am going to send him an email right now just to check in that way. But I would suggest we go ahead and begin the meeting.
We've been in touch with him, and we're sure he's coming.
Jane?
No.
Yeah, he's coming.
You know,
I am going to send him an email right now just to...
is everybody rehearing this several times? I think the farmer in the bell, they have some technical issues.
Yeah, he's coming.
You know, is everybody rehearing this several times? I think the farmer in the bell, they have some technical issues.
That was very strange.
That was pretty weird.
What do you suggest, Kurt?
I would start over and say exactly what you said before that happened.
Okay. That was very strange.
That was pretty weird.
Well, it is still happening.
Okay.
What do you suggest, Kurt?
I would start over and say exactly what you said before that happened.
Okay. That was very strange. it's still happening. You suggest? I don't necessarily know as long as I was just saying before that happened. Okay.
Try saying something now.
So we should not restart it?
Well, if it does the satanic audio again, yes, we should restart, but give it one more try.
Okay. So go.
Yeah, we're gonna
So
restart the meeting.
Right. So we should not restart it? Okay.
Well, if it does the satanic audio again, yes, we should restart.
So then I will just ask everybody to log out and log back in? So go. Okay. So we should not restart it? Okay. So then I would just ask everybody to log out and log back in? So okay. So we should not restart it? Okay. Okay. There we go.
This first meeting, Brandon.
Yeah.
It's going well.
So join with computer audio.
Yep, that's the right answer. And then the little cameras will start moving, and that's the first step. That's the right answer.
Just coming up with ideas to problem solve,
Right, no, that's a weird one. I've heard.
but would even other microphones being on or unmuted cause this?
It sounds like it's occurring when Brandon and I talk, and then they hear it like 10 seconds later. But I have all the lines muted. And the only mics that are on Brandon's desk. And then I've got one ready for you during your speaking
Okay.
part, David, but even the podium one's off.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to admit everyone.
Okay?
If you notice too, Brandon, it worked. You talked to Tony and Casey, okay? Remember?
Yeah, that's a good
Just
point.
little bit of
That's what I was wondering too, but if maybe it was coming from somebody else's broadcast. Okay. Hey, Tony, would you mind unmuting yourself?
Sure,
And Casey, would you unmute yourself, please?
sure.
I just want to see if the same issue happens.
I want to see if the same issue happens.
I'm not hearing it.
If we had a little drum beat behind it, it would have been pretty cool. Okay.
I don't remember the words to The Farmer in the Dell. I hoe the Cheerio. That's the only part I remember.
Okay, Kurt, connecting Farmer Dale right now.
Yep. Awesome.
So we'll just do this one at a time.
Okay, hello. Okay, I'm not doing it.
Well, it's still connecting audio for Farmer Dale.
Well, you should not be getting any audio from me.
Okay. City Dell is not muted. Should it be muted?
Yes, and anything that's coming from me, yeah, mute it. Yeah, for sure.
Well, apparently I don't have permission to mute City Dell.
Huh, well, okay, let me give it a shot. Well, I'll tell you, I don't have a microphone hooked up to the computer, so I probably can't participate.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what just happened. That was freaking me out because we have this show tomorrow night. Okay, well,
Okay,
Just roll the dice and let a commissioner in for board members.
okay. Yeah, City Dell is still not muted, but it may not be a problem since,
It hasn't been until
Okay.
just now, so she
Okay.
needs to mute herself.
okay. I am letting Tanya in and we'll let her know what's going on. Ready to go live with the broadcast.
Sounds good. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Chair, if you would like to kick us off again, please.
Sure. Welcome, everyone, to our meeting this evening, July 27th. We've got a full agenda, so we'll try to just plug right through this evening. Brandon, if you wouldn't mind starting us off with the disclaimer about meeting virtually so the public's aware of how we're operating this evening.
Yes, happy to. Thank you. So I'll just briefly review our modified meeting procedures to ensure our compliance with the special provisions of the Kansas Open Meetings Act during the COVID-19 pandemic. Board members and other meeting participants must state their names and titles each time they speak. All motions will need to be stated clearly. After a motion is made and seconded, the chair will call on board members individually to provide their vote. The chair will then announce whether or not the motion carried, as well as a count of the vote. The agenda for the meeting provided instructions for how to submit public comment and how it would be handled. Written public comment should be received by the posted deadline. And just for the record, we did not receive any requests from a member of the public to provide comment on any of the items this evening. Also, various members of city staff are present via Zoom and in-person attendance. They must also state their names and title each time they speak. The chair will call for in-person public comment for those without access to technology options. Staff will present, our staff who are present in the meeting will direct you to the podium to speak following social distancing and safety protocols. Again, there are no attendees in the audience at this point this evening. And then finally, I would like to remind all participants to please mute themselves when they are not speaking.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Before we get started on the approval of the minutes, can we take one quick moment to have our staff introduce themselves to us briefly, please?
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity and appreciate you pointing out, Tanya, that we didn't give a very good introduction at the last meeting. So my name is Brandon McGuire. I'm an assistant city manager, and I've been working with the city for more than 6 years now. I'm actually, I was born and raised in Lawrence, and I spent several years at the beginning of my career and in my college and graduate studies down in Wichita. And so I actually got my start in city management, working in the city manager's office for the city of Wichita. And then I got some experience working for Sedgwick County, which is one of the larger urban counties and one of the few counties in Kansas that operate under the commission manager form of government. And then following my hiring at Sedgwick County, I actually told my boss at the time that there's one job I'd leave for, and that's working in the city manager's office back in my hometown. And about 20 months later, I got the opportunity to do that and have never regretted making that decision. So I'm happy to be here. Just to let you know a little bit about my time with the city, I started as the assistant to the city manager, and I've worked with our risk management operation, our city clerk's office, and a few other functions in that role. The last several years, I have worked as a liaison from the city manager's office to our departments of Parks and Recreation, our Public Works and Utilities Department, which we have undergone a consolidation or merger of, and now that's referred to as the Municipal Services and Operations Department. Here recently, in anticipation of the upcoming City Commission strategic plan and some initiatives that we're trying to get underway, we have reorganized our office. And the 3 assistant city managers have taken on different responsibilities. And so now, in addition to Parks and Rec and our parking and transit operations, I'm actually going to be working with our police department and with our fire and medical department. So I'll be the main point of contact out of the city manager's office, working with those departments for the foreseeable future. And as such, I get the opportunity to work with this board, and I'm very much looking forward to doing that, especially at such an exciting time to be engaged in the work that you're doing. We also have City Attorney Tony Wheeler on the call, and I'd ask her to make some comments and introduction of herself.
Good evening, everyone. As Brandon said, I'm the city attorney for the city of Lawrence. I have served in this, I've worked for the city since 1999, and I've been the overseeing the legal department since 2006. I, along with 2 other city attorneys, advise the city commission, city management, and city employees on a whole host of municipal law issues. And we also represent the city in court and in legal proceedings, and I oversee all of the outside counsel that we use. I also oversee the municipal court operations, the prosecutor's office, and the human relations division, which is our local civil rights agency. I am married. I've been married for 29 years, and I have 2 children, a 21-year-old girl and daughter and a 17-year-old boy. I'm looking forward to working with this board. I do have occasion to work with different advisory boards, working on projects that are of particular interest to the City Commission. So I'm really looking forward to working with you on this project, and I thank you so much.
I would also add that Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey is on the meeting. And I think she'll have an opportunity to introduce herself when we get to her item. But Casey, if you do want to say a few words, jump in.
Oh, I'll just go ahead. Casey Toomey, I am an Assistant City Manager, as Brandon said, and I've been in that position since 2014. I've been with the city since 2003, however, in a number of different capacities. Primarily, I was budget manager for a number of years here for the city. I am serving sort of in an interim equity and inclusion director capacity right now as we continue to recruit for that position. And in my day job, my normal job, I guess I would say, I oversee kind of our internal service departments, so administrative functions. So our HR department, finance, IT, and our communications and sustainability.
Thanks, Casey. And then I'd note that Sergeant Dave Ernst is also here in attendance.
Hi, Sergeant Ernst. Okay, very good. Thank you so much for doing that. We're glad to have you with us. Okay, let's go ahead and move approval of the minutes.
Sanjay Mishra, I move.
Everyone had the chance to read those, and there be a motion? Or do we need Sanjay's moved? Is there a
Sanjay
second?
Mishra, yes. I move.
Yes. Is there a second?
I'll second. Jane Gibson.
Go ahead, Jane.
I'm
Jane seconded.
Yeah. There's some audio feedback here. It's hard to understand what you said, Tanya.
Okay, how about now? Is that better?
I believe there was just some latency in your connection.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of the approval of the minutes? Let's start with the roll call. Member Gibson?
Aye.
Bill? Bill, was that an aye? I think it was. Okay, thumbs up, aye. Stephanie?
Aye.
Thank you. And Sanjay?
Sanjay Mishra, aye.
And Chair Tanya Salvini, I vote aye. And so we've got 5 unanimously approving the minutes. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to public comments. And as was mentioned earlier, Brandon, there's no one there in the room?
Correct.
Anything was received earlier for comments?
Correct.
Okay, we'll just go ahead and move on then. Thank you. Let's go with agenda item number 1, receive staff presentation on Racial Equity Toolkit from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And Casey, are you presenting that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. This is Casey Toomey, Assistant City Manager, and I am going to be presenting tonight on the Racial Equity Toolkit from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. Before I walk through that toolkit, I thought I would share a video. I've made this presentation to a couple other of our advisory boards, and so I wanted to show you that. I'll show you all the video as well to give you a little bit of background on the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. So I'm going to share my screen and start that video here.
A social movement that only moves people is merely a revolt. A movement that changes both people and institutions is
Can
a
everyone see
revolution.
that and hear it okay?
The Government Alliance on Race and Equity is a national network of local government working to advance racial equity and lift up outcomes for everyone. GARE is helping people to understand that the government had a role in creating racial inequity and creating racial disparities. We have to normalize conversations about race. That means that we have commonly held definitions, that we're working from a shared framework and a shared understanding.
My observation and experience was that we had to move beyond the conversations about diversity and inclusion and really talk about racism and structural racism and systemic racism, how that contributed and how it continues to contribute to the disparities that we see in our community.
Looking at redlining, looking at urban renewal, and normalizing that dialogue so that there's a much more broad understanding about the root causes of disparity in communities of color and how we have an opportunity to do something about that.
The city of St. Paul set a goal for all employees to go through our racial equity foundations training by the end of 2017, and we were able to achieve that goal.
We've been working at this for a long time in the city, taking them through a serious race empowerment illusion so people can understand why we were even coming at this work.
We have trained over 5,000 employees. Through that, the conversation around race became normalized.
Operationalizing racial equity means that we're not just talking about theory, that we're actually creating change. We're taking ideas and putting them into practice using the Racial Equity tool and developing racial equity action plans.
We were able to put in place a Racial Equity Toolkit. Through that, we were able to work with other government agencies in the city of Portland to start talking about the outcomes that we want to see in the services that we provide.
One of the most exciting things that the SFPUC is working on to advance racial equity is really this place-based investment in Bayview Hunters Point, in which we have our Southeast Treatment Plant, where we treat 80% of the city's sewage. It is a huge opportunity to really deeply invest in a historic African-American neighborhood.
Creating a space where if you're working for the city of St. Paul, that means you're looking at everything from an equity lens, and that you're going to put together an action plan, and that the supervisor is going to hold you accountable for achieving those goals.
So we finally got a workforce equity strategic plan that has been resourced by council and the mayor. One of the things that we did in order to get that plan in place was to go out and have focus groups with our employees. We are creating an entire program of training and workshop type deals so that all 2,500 managers and supervisors in the city will be required to go through this.
Organizing means that within the institution, we're building skills. We're building capacity to actually transform the organization.
What I'm most excited about happening is a true community engagement. I'd like to see a full integration of all of these entities coming together under the infrastructure that GARE provides.
If we are to get to the kind of democratic, just society we want, it's only going to happen locally with local government. And it will be the accumulation of all that work that finally actually shows us as a nation how we live.
Okay, this is Casey Toomey, Assistant City Manager again. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of understanding of the type of work that the members of the Alliance are doing. just a minute on the work that the city has done with GEAR. We've used their member portal to be able to obtain some sample job descriptions that we use to identify the roles and responsibilities that we wanted to include in our position for our Director of Equity and Inclusion. We've also been able to reach out to other communities and see how they have considered equity as part of their prioritization of capital improvement projects that we were then able to incorporate into our process. We've attended lots of different webinars, specifically here related to COVID. We've had a number, particularly looking at how equity can be part of your strategic budget decisions. And then we've also, another example is used the Alliance to find out how other communities have elevated equitable banking practices and incorporate that into the city's RFP for banking services. The Racial Equity Toolkit is one of many different resources that GEAR provides. And sorry, I'm trying to talk and do two things at the same time here, which is never a good idea.
A social movement
Let's try it again. Okay, sorry. So what is the toolkit? We really just started beginning to work with this particular tool that GEAR offers, but put very simply, it's a set of questions or steps to ask when you're considering a policy, a practice, or a program. There was a link on the agenda to a document that explains the tool, and I'm going to pull that up and share it for the public and anybody who's interested as we walk through it. So again, forgive me while I pull that up here on my screen. Okay. So here, this is an appendix back at the back of the document, but I think it's the easiest to walk through. So you can see here that sort of the first set of questions, and then there's a number of sub-questions, is related to this step one. What is the proposal and the desired results and outcomes? So this is taking the opportunity to say, what is it that you're trying to decide, and what are the intended results? It gives you the ability to kind of, you'll see here some different categories to be very intentional about what it is that you're trying to do and trying to decide. Next, the second step is really all about the data. So looking at different data sets that you have that look at the impacts of a proposal on a particular geographic area, on the demographics of people living in those particular areas, and using that data to look at what it's telling you about racial inequities. Does it tell you about the root causes or factors that are influencing it? And then what kind of performance level data do you have available for a proposal? If you don't, what are those data gaps, and how would you go about getting the data that you might need to better analyze the proposal? Step 3, and feel free to jump in if I'm going too fast, it talks about kind of a community engagement. And are you including people who are the most affected community members in reference to this proposal? Have you engaged those folks in putting the proposal together? Who has been benefited or burdened by what you're proposing? And what does your engagement process tell you about factors that produce or perpetuate racial inequity? So those are, again, kind of all questions around that community engagement piece. Step 4 is about strategies. So what have you learned on how to increase, and how will your proposal increase or decrease racial inequity? Again, that question of who benefits and who is burdened. You'll see throughout a lot of GEAR work that that benefit and burden question is kind of at the core of a lot of the questions that they have folks go through when they're doing equity work. What are the potential unintended consequences, and are there ways that your proposal could be modified to reduce any negative consequences? And then what strategies could you implement? Are there partnerships that you could strengthen that would help minimize any negative impacts? And then finally, in step 5, kind of what is the plan for your implementation? Is it realistic? How will you fund it? And if the answer to any of your questions are no, then what other additional resources might you need? And really, there's one more, 6. How will you ensure accountability, communication, and evaluate results? So how do you know that this toolkit, if you use it and you do your proposal or you make your budget decision or you put that program in place, how will you know what the outcomes are, and how will you be able to communicate that? So that in a nutshell is the toolkit. It seems simple, 6 easy steps, but again, each one of them kind of drills down into a little bit of additional information. So any questions about that? I don't see any. I might just also mention that we have used a streamlined version of a toolkit like this in the COVID-19 recovery team. There's a team of equity advisors that's been advising that coordinated recovery team here in the county, and we put together a more streamlined version of these 6 steps for that group to use. So they're going through a similar analysis for all of the different proposals for the $25 million worth of CARES Act funding that's been released, or that's going to be released to the county. So using this toolkit will be a way for our community to make sure that we're looking at those funding decisions through an equity lens, because as we all know, COVID-19 has had disparate impact on some of our communities of color. So we want to be very intentional as we talk about recovery, that the strategies that we're following are appropriate. So there's lots of different toolkits like this out there. Wanted to highlight this one. There are also, on tomorrow night's agenda, one of the attachments is our city manager's report. There's a little brief overview of some other tools out there. So if any of you are interested and you want to navigate out there to the city manager's report attached to the agenda tomorrow night, you could find some more information there. So I'll stop there and again, be happy to answer any questions. Go ahead.
Question from Jane.
Certainly this board has an interest in racial equity. I'm wondering if there was some specific vision for the way that this toolkit might be applied by this board. Did somebody have some idea that we might put this to work in some particular way?
This is Casey Toomey. I'll start and then Brandon, of course, can jump in here. I think that the vision was that you all would know that this tool was out there, and if there were decisions that you all were making, or as you look at different policies that relate to the work that you all are doing, this is a kind of a framework that you all could use that would be then consistent with some of the questions and information that other advisory boards were going to be looking at. This tool was one of the things that the mayor mentioned back in June when she had proposed a 12 points, kind of a 12-point plan that she put before the commission to consider. This was one of the tools that she mentioned. And so that's why we wanted to bring it before you all tonight. Brandon, I don't know if you have anything that you would add that would be different.
This is Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. I really don't have much else to add, Casey. I think you hit the target. That's really why I asked Casey to join us this evening. We are working with many of our advisory boards as well as our city staff and city commissioners, because a toolkit like this provides us a common methodology and some consistency, so that we are all sort of using some of the same terms, the same expectations for how we engage in a lot of the work that we do. And so that this is really an advisory, and I would just encourage the board to dig into the toolkit in your own time, and feel free to have conversations with us about how we might be able to offer additional resources related to the toolkit.
Sanjay?
Sanjay Mishra, board member. To me, is it fair to presume that we don't have much experience with this toolkit?
This is Casey Toomey, Assistant City Manager. That is fair to assume. So our membership in GARE started last April, and the mayor, Mayor Ananda, and I attended the annual meeting of members at that time, and learned about GARE and all of the tools that they offer. Flash forward to March of 2020, when we were going to go to the annual meeting again and be train the trainer session on how to use this toolkit at that annual meeting. However, COVID caused that meeting to be canceled. So we weren't able to go and get that training on how to administer this toolkit. So we haven't been able to really roll it out as maybe we had intended, but we're trying to do that now.
May I follow up? This is Sanjay Mishra again, board member. So again, Assistant Manager Toomey. The question is, in your experience or in your conversations with people who have communities that have used this, how long does it take to go through steps 1 through 5? Because 6 we can leave out, and which is critical in there?
This is Assistant City Manager Casey Toomey. I think all 6 steps are critical in order for it to really be used as intended. Again, like Brandon said, the idea is that it's consistent across all of the decisions that are being considered in a particular agency or by a particular board. So I guess I would say I haven't had that conversation with anybody who has used the toolkit. That's all based on my conversations with GARE and their leadership about how they recommend that you roll it out. But that's certainly a good example of a kind of a question that I can pose on the member portal and get feedback from different agencies who have used the toolkit. So I'm certainly happy to do that. As far as the time that it takes, I think it depends. From what I've gathered, the data piece can be kind of maybe where the biggest variable is. If you have data readily available, that drills down to the level that you need to kind of address that data step, that second step, I think you're able to use it faster. Absent that, I could see that you might have to take some time, again, to identify what those data gaps are, come up with strategies on how to resolve those, or at least identify what those gaps are and spend some time trying to find out if that data is available other places. I think sometimes our organization has to remember that we aren't the end all be all, and we need to reach out to other partners and find out what data they have. Our health department has a lot of good data, and KU obviously has some good data that we have to reach out sometimes and get. Is that getting at your question?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Casey, thank you so much for that presentation. Are there any other questions? Stephanie?
This is Stephanie Middleton. Casey, I do have a couple of questions, if I may. The appendix that you showed, is that on the GARE website? Because I've been through some of this. I'm still looking for it.
You have to download the document and then look at the appendix.
It's all the way, okay. I'll keep scrolling through it, okay. So then the other question I was gonna ask is, Casey, as I think of kind of a standardization thought, or a consistency, if you will, as it's rolled out, when you're doing the trainer, is there something we can expect maybe as board members, maybe getting some additional, and obviously we can each need to go through, look through some of this as well, but will there be some in the near future, some more tutorials or such coming up?
This is Casey Toomey, Assistant City Manager. So I think that yes, ideally, when we're able to start training back up again, we will get that kind of train the trainer experience and then be able to visit with all of you. GARE is in the process of making some of that training available virtually. And so when that, when they've completed that shift, then we'll be able to get some of that. In the meantime, if you have specific questions, again, that's the beauty of that portal, is we can always ask those. We also have a kind of regional director that is available. She's very responsive, so I can send any emails to her, and she's really quick to turn around an answer.
Really appreciate Mr. Middleton. Appreciate the presentation, Casey.
Thank you, Casey. Is there anything more that you wanted to discuss around this issue? I have a couple of things, if that's okay. Okay. So this is Tanya, the Chair Tanya. I use first names. Sorry about that. I'm wondering, as we're moving through this process, how we might be able to think about what's in here and use some of these tools, maybe in some of the work as we move along to define that in our board. And I'm wondering about step 3 in terms of engagement, and I'm not thinking about using this as a hard and fast blueprint, but I was thinking about the board and ways in which we can engage better with the community. And there are a couple of things that come to mind. I'm going to bring one up later when we hear from our work group. But this question really might be for Tony and Brandon and you, Casey, and that is, if this particular board wanted to engage in some way with the whole community, the broad community, and create kind of a resource reference area that we could post up best practices or articles or any kind of reference materials that we're studying, looking at, want to share, and allow invitations from community members to do the same. Is that a possibility at all? And I'm thinking more in COVID times, of course, to find some legal, mechanism online where the access is there and these articles can be posted, perhaps screened prior to posting. Mm-hmm.
City Attorney Tony Wheeler, I'll jump in first and then Brandon can add if he wants to. I think we would be open to looking at doing that. We would have to be concerned about copyright and make sure we're not violating anyone's copyrights. And then there would probably need to be some screening whenever the government, and obviously the city is a government, when we open our resources up for posting, we have to follow certain rules so that we don't, violate First Amendment rights. So, we'd have to do it carefully, but I think it could be done, with some work and preparation put on it.
This is Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. Tanya, and I hope you don't mind me using first names also, that is a good question. And there was another question about sort of how this is applied that I believe Jane asked. And I think, I would really encourage the board members, as you work through your immediate focus on the ordinance and the role and scope of the board, and then longer term, as the board gets into much other work and activities, really lean on us as the staff. If you do a good job as a board working in the policy arena of giving us a target to hit, you can lean on us to put together processes, engagement efforts, in other work to support the goal of the board, and then that way we, the staff, the city staff, Casey and I share a wall between our two offices, so it's very, very much easier for me to make sure that a process that we design for your consideration or an effort we design for your consideration is consistent with this toolkit, than it would be for each of you, either individually or collectively, to get into the details of designing a certain sort of engagement effort yourselves. That's not to try to take that privilege away from you if you wish to do it that way, but that is, I just want to encourage you that we're here to help in that regard.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. And, you know, and I know that the scope would have to be more defined in terms of intent, you know, and that you can move back to you know, screen materials to make sure they're anchored in what our purpose is and what we're doing and those kinds of things. So, but it was something that I was thinking of that, you know, if we're finding some good resources, we'd love to share them with the public, just as you shared this with us. And, you know, we learned about it certainly from the mayor. So having these resources pulled together and having access to them, again, could be very helpful, I think, in engaging with the community a little bit. So that was just one thing I was going to bring up here. And step 3 really does talk about that, and I think that that's important. And again, I'm going to bring that up when we get to the work of the work group. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, we're ready to go ahead and move to the next agenda item. So we received the report, and thank you again, Casey, appreciate it. The next agenda item is to discuss the City Commission guidance related to Community Police Review Board's recommendation to expand the board membership. Is that you, Brandon?
Yes, this is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. I'm happy to share that feedback from the City Commission. So the Commission did consider the board's recommendation last Tuesday evening at the July 21st City Commission meeting. It was placed on the consent agenda and was pulled off for a separate discussion and vote by the Commissioners. The Commissioners did vote unanimously to refer the recommendation back to the Community Police Review Board with the guidance to engage with the public, engage with the consultant, meaning the consultant who will ultimately be hired to conduct the comprehensive study of the police department, and to engage with city staff in the development of comprehensive recommendations to the ordinance. And so I can communicate one of the takeaways from the conversation was that there was a feeling that maybe the recommendation to expand the board at this point was piecemeal and could be considered as part of a comprehensive recommendation for amendments or revisions to the ordinance, the authorizing ordinance for the board. And if I interpret correctly, that's what the City Commission is looking for, is a comprehensive package of recommendations for those changes.
Excuse me, is there any discussion?
Yes.
Okay, Bill.
Mr. McGuire, are we to understand that the work that this board does is on hold until you have a consultant on board?
This is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. I don't believe that is intent of the Commission's direction. The Commission did encourage the board to work with the consultant, and I think that was also an acknowledgement that that much of the work that the board has discussed in some of the subcommittees that were identified, the subject matter, the content would overlap with the work that is contemplated in that consultant study. And so I don't think that prevents the board from getting started and discussing those issues or meeting about those issues. In fact, I think there could be some benefit to that in developing some collective knowledge on those issues. So I would not take that as an indication that the commission wanted to put the work of the board on hold.
This is Bill Grable. I have a follow-up to that.
Yes, go ahead, Bill.
Well, then, do I understand you correctly? While we could work on things, we should expect the commission to take no action on our work until the commission has had input from the consultant.
This is Chair Salvini. I'm not sure that's what I heard, but I'm really going to.
This is directed to Mr. McGuire, Chair.
McGuire? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, this is Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. I did not get that impression also. I think that the work of the board can be sequenced in a way, and by the work of the board I mean the current task of reviewing the ordinance. It can be sequenced so that you could come back with a comprehensive package of recommendations related to the ordinance, which if I understand correctly, is the work that the subcommittee is undertaking. And we do have that update scheduled for the next item on the agenda. And so I would think that you can present a recommendation to the ordinance as a comprehensive package, if that hits the target of your question.
Yes.
Sanjay.
Sanjay Mishra, board member. So thank you, Bill, for raising that issue. I think in context that could be critical, because when we voted to expand it, it was because we didn't have enough bodies to do the tasks that we are supposed to do. But then if we want to reframe it, we could ask the question, what is most important of these 4 subcommittees' tasks that we need to do? And then grab that. But your point, Bill, is very, very important, is that whatever recommendation, I think the way it appears is whatever recommendation we make, it'll have to wait to get the sanction of the consultant, because then it gets rolled into a composite or a overall evaluation and development of the item. So to that end, my question for City Manager McGuire would be, what's the time frame for this consultant to get their work done?
This is Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. That is a good question, and we do not have a timeline spelled out in the RFP. That is something that will be refined through the consultant selection process once we get to a final scope of work and a contract with a consultant. There will be different parts of the work that will most likely be done in different phases. The total study will most likely take several months and would be completed, I would anticipate late spring of next year. But there are pieces of the work that will very likely be done earlier than that. That being said, I would not anticipate having a consultant under contract until probably late September or early October, just understanding how long these processes take to get to a final contract.
Thank you.
Board Member Gibson.
This is Jane Gibson, board member. So even if we hire the consultant, let's say in late September or October, which is pretty good, there won't be any, am I correct in understanding that the consultant would not have conducted the study and would really not have any basis to provide, I guess, the kind of consultation with the CPRB that you're imagining here on the ordinance. Is that correct? So I guess I'm thinking that in order for us to work with the consultant actually has to already know some things about the Lawrence Police Department and the CPRB and the current ordinance and the city commission and the culture of this town. So we wouldn't, I'm trying to figure out, does this mean that we wouldn't have any ability to modify this ordinance to make this board useful until late spring? Is that correct?
This is Assistant City Manager Brandon McGuire. I would encourage you not to get, or not to put too much emphasis on the consultant. That was one of the one of the points of guidance from the commission. They also highlighted city staff and the public. I have not been involved in the subcommittee's work on the ordinance, but I do think that there's probably an opportunity to present recommendations comprehensively on the ordinance, which really is the authorizing ordinance for the board, and then that can probably set the board up to engage in future work, subsequent work related more to the issue of policing, and so I don't see why the guidance from the commission would inhibit a comprehensive set of recommendations on the ordinance going back to the city commission or going before the city commission. And I think that in that case, since you make the good point about the timeline with the consultant study and the work on the ordinance, they wouldn't line up very well. And I don't think that it's the commission's intent to wait until wait several months until we have a consultant on board and they've gotten a chance to review the work on the ordinance. I don't think it's the commission's intent to wait that long on the ordinance.
Thank you.
But what I did hear then is that it is the city's intent to have a more comprehensive proposal as opposed to a piecemeal. And so the interpretation was that coming forward with the recommendation of expanding it to 9 members then was more piecemeal, as you said?
Yes, this is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. Yes, that I think the expansion of membership, and again, I'm trying to interpret the City Commission's guidance, so please forgive me if I'm not exactly on target. But the expansion of the membership is an alteration to the ordinance, and I think what the City Commission was hoping for was the opportunity to consider all of the recommendations from the board related to altering the ordinance, whether it's amending or revising parts of the ordinance. And so I think that they saw that as just one piece, and they were hoping to receive the full complement of recommendations that will ultimately come out of the subcommittee and then out of the board. And in doing that, I think that there will be opportunities for public engagement and engagement with the staff before that goes to the City Commission. As Dr. Gibson pointed out, that's probably not going to happen with a consultant on board in that timeline.
Okay, very good. Any other comments or questions? Stephanie?
Stephanie, you're muted.
Sorry, I thought I had clicked on it. I clicked on it probably twice. Stephanie Littleton, Vice Chair. Brandon, thanks for the clarification. I think I completely understand it now. And I understand not piecemealing for the size of the board, and we will be ready for comprehensive to come forward. So thank you for that. And I think we're probably ready for the next step on the agenda here.
All right, very good. Anything else? Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you so much for discussing that with us, Brendan. Okay, number 3, receive an update from the work group. So let's move forward and hear from our work group. Once again, I'd like to identify the work group members, and those are committee members, or board member, Gibson, Graybill, and Littleton. The floor is yours.
This is board member Graybill, and I was, I guess, being the minority on the board, I got to be the person who came and talked to you all tonight. We've had several meetings, many meetings actually, looked at ordinances from several different cities to try to get new ideas. We've engaged on an individual basis different commissioners. We've engaged members of the police department on an individual basis. We've had some engagement with staff, but I would admit that that's been minimal. And we've had a lot of individual engagement with members of the public. As a result of what we have been doing, we have completed a complete set of ideas that we are ready to present to this board for further discussion, hopefully for setting up public hearings on it, and making whatever changes need to be made and going from there. I don't know where going from there is after I saw this resolution or the motion from the city commission. So that's where we're at right now. We've got about a 10-page working document. We developed a flow chart. I think it's fairly comprehensive, and we're ready to present it at any time the board wants to have it. And that brings you up to date where the work group is.
Okay, Bill, thank you so much. Are there any other additional comments from the work group? Jane, Stephanie?
Surely I didn't get it all in, Stephanie.
Yeah, well, I think you did, Bill.
This is Stephanie Bolton, Vice Chair. Bill, you know.
I'm ready. I'm so ready for this. So, no, this is great. Thank you so much for all of your hard work and so, gosh, masterfully done in terms of time. I'll wait and certainly add that adjective to the document, I'm sure. But anyway, I think this is wonderful. Stephanie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I know, and I hope I'm not stepping out too far ahead of my working group here because we've talked about this, but and if anybody wishes to speak, if I'm not getting ahead, but we would like to make a motion this evening, basically to call a special meeting of the CPRB. We've kind of looked at a date, possibly of August 13th, to propose and bring this forward for the rest of the board to be able to present that to you. With the putting that in there with the possibility of utilizing our August 27th meeting to open up for the public.
Okay. Is that in the form of a motion, or is that an anticipated move we're going to discuss for a minute? Jane.
Jane Gibson, board member. That was a motion, and I would like to second that motion.
Okay, very good. So to repeat the motion from Stephanie Littleton, member Stephanie Littleton, she's proposing to have a special Community Police Review Board meeting August 13th to bring forward the work that the work group has done and work through the 10-page document along with the flow chart. And that would be with the intention of having a community hearing on August 27th and to open it up to the public. And it's been seconded by Jane. So let's have a discussion. Go ahead, Jane.
I just wanted to ask Brandon McGuire about publishing the draft that we put together. We want to be sure that the board members have ample time to read and digest it. We don't want it to just, spring it on them at the meeting. They need time to think about it, so that we have a thorough, thoughtful discussion of what's in it. So Brandon, is there some, I don't know, minimum time before a meeting that we can't put it up before some time, or can we go ahead and get it to you and get it on the city website so that the board members can read it? And anybody else for that matter, but.
Yes, Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. That's a great question, and we can accommodate pretty much any timeline, especially if this is a special meeting, which I would anticipate being a single issue meeting, just to discuss this document, so we wouldn't have to worry about city staff preparing other materials for the meeting. I will take the opportunity to just acknowledge that I am unaware of what the schedule is for this room on August 13th, and I'm having difficulty pulling that calendar up. If Casey or Tony or Kurt have the ability to look at that calendar, feel free to advise me on that. Otherwise, I'll keep trying. But this is the only room that we would be able to broadcast that meeting publicly over our YouTube and TV channel.
Okay, Jane?
This is Jane Gibson again, Brendan. So maybe you can tell us before this meeting is over this evening whether or not we can have the room for the 13th. I think we can try to be flexible on the date. We were just reaching for some midpoint between now and the August 27th meeting. So I don't know that we are committed. We're certainly not wedded to that date. What was that? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, this is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. Kurt just advised me, I think he was able to check the calendar and says that the room is available on the 13th of August.
Great. So we can go ahead and send you the draft and you can put it on the city website?
That's correct.
Is that how we do that, Brandon?
Yes, we could go, we have the ability to publish an agenda for a meeting pretty much at any time. So we could publish the agenda several weeks in advance. So we could turn that around very quickly.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other comments or any other discussion? There is one thing I would like to say very quickly, and that is that the mayor did call. We had a brief conversation, and she applauded the work of the board for sure, and wondered if, in terms of not only a hearing, an open forum or community hearing, if there could be some other engagement and outreach to particular communities or particular groups. And so that question was raised, and so I'm going to raise it to you all here as well, because it seems germane to this. So I guess my question in terms of protocol is, after the community hearing, is it possible then to take it out, let's just say to a few groups for listening sessions or sounding sessions to get more feedback from the community? And I'm just putting that out there after the open hearing.
This is Stephanie Littleton, Vice Chair. I'm certainly open for suggestions from everyone on this call tonight. I mean, obviously, not everybody probably could attend one particular meeting, but I'm certainly open for that.
Well, this is Jane Gibson. We also have some coma issues there, so I like very much the idea that we might do some listening sessions if there are groups that wanted us to present, but we can't violate coma. So we would need some guidance to know how we
absolutely
do that.
I completely agree, and that's where I was going, not only with the references and posting the references up somewhere for resources, but also the fact, are we allowed to go out and have hearing sessions or listening sessions with other groups? Because I'm thinking, there's an organized NAACP group that we could go to and talk about the work that we've done, how a little timeline of the history, and then talk about what we're proposing so we can get some feedback. Like, for example, the NAACP group. So do we reach out, can we reach out to people and engage with the community and take that initiative? Or, I mean, does that violate anything with the open meetings laws?
This is Tony Wheeler, City Attorney. If the full board wished to do that, you would have to notice up a meeting and publish it and make sure that everyone that has interested in attending your meetings has an opportunity to attend that. If one person wanted to act as a spokesperson, that could be done. It just gets a little bit tricky for that person to be able to say that they're representing the full board, because they may, that may be a hard thing to do. Perhaps you could, Madam Chairperson, meet with Brandon about what your idea is, and we can try to find a way to develop sort of the list of groups that you're interested in going to, and perhaps we could devise a plan that would satisfy COMA and achieve your goals as well.
Okay, very good. Sanjay?
So my thought was, in this case, if we are trying to engage with the public, is this going to be driven by us, or can it also be communities who have interest in this? Can they organize something and then we have listening posts in there? Because we want to use the time most efficiently as possible. And if we say, yes, we're going to do a public hearing, and instead of 15 people, 2 people come, and it may be quality data with 2 people also, but all things equal, I would like 15 people to be there rather than 1 person. And how do we gauge interest from the participant community so that our listening events are efficient and effective for us? Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, we're ready to vote on the motion, again, that came forward by Member Littleton and seconded by Gibson. All those in favor signify with an aye. James?
Aye, who's ringing? I'm not ringing.
Those are nice bells.
That was aye.
Okay, I got it. Bell?
Aye.
Okay, Stephanie?
Stephanie Littleton, aye.
Sanjay?
Okay, aye.
And as the chair, I'm voting aye. So we've got 5 votes, and it passes unanimously. Okay, are we ready for the next item?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Before we move on to the next item, and I don't want to elongate this discussion anymore, but I would suggest that that perhaps you and me have a phone call, hopefully tomorrow or sometime this week, and we can talk about just make sure we understand the expectations for stakeholder engagement, and then maybe I can present a brief outline of what that might look like at this special meeting.
Okay, very good. I mean, I just want to make sure we have as much engagement, and we hear from, a nice, lovely cross-section of our residents here in Lawrence, and have that opportunity to contribute.
Absolutely.
To our work, yeah. Okay, very good, Brandon. Thank you. The next item is the discussion of racial or other bias-based policing. I'm sorry. I've got a little font here. Policing comprehensive plan is referenced by the Attorney General Racial and Bias-Based Policing Annual Report. Yeah.
Sit down this time. Hello, everyone. Sergeant David Ernst.
Thank you.
I might be looking at a different agenda. So at first is about the bias-based policing then, and a follow-up on your folks' participation. Is that accurate? Or there's the other topic about the comprehensive plan. And I'm sorry.
I think this is the Attorney General's report that was has been referenced in the meeting.
No, I know. I want to make sure I'm correct on the agenda. Okay. So on this.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Remember?
And so in reference to agenda item number 5, once again, this is Sergeant David Ernst. You folks had asked last meeting about the comprehensive plan. And so I had reached out to the Deputy Attorney General. Her name's Catherine Carter. And she had sent me, there's 2 statutes attached to the agenda there. And essentially stated in her email that she could provide training over a 3-hour time frame, and she recommends doing that in 1.5-hour blocks. And I did want to point out, and she had actually highlighted in the statute 22-4610 that, and it's actually subsection 3B, and that actually community advisory boards shall receive training on fair and impartial policing, which had occurred at the inception of the board, but also for this comprehensive plan. And so then in the 22-4611A, it details things that are included in a comprehensive plan. And I guess we would then ultimately await future direction from the board on scheduling the training. If that, well, I say if, but ultimately it's saying that you folks should have or shall have this training. And I know the schedule is getting busy, so it might, I guess I have one other recommendation is waiting till you folks get back to full steam with 7 people prior to scheduling this training.
Sorry, Sergeant Ernst, could you please repeat the name of the person from the Attorney General's office again?
It's Catherine, and it's Kathryn Carter.
Thank you. Okay, board discussion?
This is Stephanie Littleton, Vice Chair. Yeah, I think he makes a really good point that, we may want to put it out, a couple of months, at least out till we can kind of work through, especially the importance of our revised plan and all. So whatever that looks like, if it's October, possibly.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be good. Hopefully we'll be up 2 more members by then.
And so, and maybe this, and if I'm jumping ahead, I apologize, maybe when we're talking to Brandon, but I will reach out at some point and schedule this training. Is it okay if the board, I know we have an October meeting scheduled. Does anybody know off the top of their head if there's one scheduled after October? And so do we want to, is it the preference of the board to try to have all 3 hours at once? And I'm repeating, it was a very short email, but her preference is 2 1.5-hour blocks. So does anybody have any preference on that? I see Jane.
Jane.
Dr. Gibson, I apologize.
I answer to Jane, thank you. I prefer the 1.5-hour blocks.
Sanjay Mishra, me too, 1.5-hour blocks, because I think that'll give a little time for marination to happen, and hopefully we have a little more understanding and questions for the second. But I would also suggest that we could do these, remember the one we schedule and then we have an alternate, so we could schedule it a week apart rather than 4 weeks apart.
Yeah, and so that would be, and then my next curiosity is, so we have the meeting, we actually have, if I recall correctly, our meeting in October, and then we actually have a couple days later or a week later, another meeting. Do we want to keep those dates and schedule, and I can look at my calendar and see exactly what I'm referring to, but just, how we normally we're normally having a meeting and then canceling the second one, but go ahead and try to split it up between those 2 meetings. Is that, I want to make sure we meet the requests or the desires of the board. And I'm looking at.
I'm thinking our meeting might be October 8th. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think it was the second week last October.
There's Sergeant David Ernst. I am seeing one on October 8th. And then I believe there's going to be a second one, and that would be on October 21st. If it's, and I guess just to be clear, if it's okay with the board, I will try to schedule those 2 dates, but then I guess we'll have to keep in mind also the availability of staff from the Attorney General's office. So, and I guess to be very clear, I will try to schedule a 1.5 hour block on the 8th and a 1.5 hour block on the 21st of October.
Okay, Jane?
I'd like to hear from you, Tanya, and Bill and Stephanie about this 1.5 hour block plan. Are you guys okay with that? I mean, Sanjay and I want that. Do you all want that?
Yes, I'm good with that.
I'm good with it.
Bill's good with it. Stephanie?
This is Stephanie. I was going to say do all 3 hours, but I'm absolutely fine with 1.5 because we're going to have other things on the agenda, so it makes sense. So absolutely, I'm good with it.
Okay, that sounds good, Sergeant Ernst. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And would you like me, Chair Salvini, to move on to the next, I think it has to do with by our department's bias-based policing training?
I believe so. Any other comments or discussion on the training from the Attorney General's office? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and move to the next action item. You want to go ahead and go? Yes.
And that, if my recollection serves me correctly, was based on last meeting as number one, as the board's desire to participate in the Lawrence Police Department's bias-based training. And then also there was an inquiry about the ability to take the online KLETC training. And so I can make it very quick and say the answer to both questions is yes. As far as our own departmental training, what we would probably do is, the answer is yes, we would have our instructors come in and present to the board. And so now my only recommendation there is, and your folks' schedule is, as you know, getting busy, but trying to wait till the presenters can show up in person. But also I recognize too, there's kind of an unknown end date of when that could occur, but that's just a personal recommendation. And so, but we would have our trainer or trainers come in and provide that training. And then on the second tenet of this topic, referring to the online bias-based policing training, I contacted personnel at KLETC, that's the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center, and citizens can, I asked specifically about the online bias-based policing training, but if I had to guess, you could go on and take any of the ongoing training that's offered on their website. And so I have currently the bias-based policing training is not up because they've just reset the training year. So she made the comment, the person I spoke with, that it's under review. So I have a reminder set in my calendar. I had it prior to the August 27th meeting, and I'll probably still leave it as that. And we can provide more formal instruction on how to go complete that training. I know a couple of you are affiliated with KU. It is ultimately administered through KU Blackboard. But you could go to kletc.org right now and peruse the professional development section of that website, as well as anything else you so desire to look at, and see the online course offerings. But the current bias-based policing is not on the website yet, at least as of like around 11 o'clock today. Stephanie, I see you.
Yeah, this is Stephanie Littleton. Sergeant Ernst, do you know, is there a date set for your department to take, because it's annual, a couple hours in person? Do you have a date set for them to take that in person and online as well?
So all that is required is annual bias-based policing training. Some years we have done both online and in person. So we always make certain that the commission personnel complete the online course. Sometimes in addition, there will be in-person training. So I do not know the upcoming in-service schedule for the next training year, but the online we just completed. I usually start, I'll reach out in about February of next year and remind the officers that they need to get this training taken care of, and then I will set some reminders and ultimately to ensure that all of our personnel have completed the online bias-based policing training prior to the submission of the annual report. So I guess to be more succinct, I don't know if it's even planned in person coming up for the next calendar year, training calendar year for in-service training, but it will be reminded of the officers, or they'll basically be instructed to do so beginning in 2021.
I do have a question then, just real quickly. It's a larger question.
Yeah.
And that is, if we were to look at a pie of all the training and the professional development training that you do, in terms of percentage, what would be the largest percentage of training that Lawrence Police Department does?
You know, that's kind of tough to answer. Some of it's dependent upon the officer and what they do or do not seek out. It'd probably be a better question for me to answer if I actually got and looked, because I'd be trying to recall off memory what things we've trained on in the past year or 2 years. So it's generally not all of one thing. It's just dependent upon what's annually required. Like we have every other year, I know, standardized field sobriety testing, referencing DUI investigations. Officers have to be recertified on that. So there are requirements. Taser recertification about, safely deploying the taser and use of the taser. There's an annual or an ongoing requirement for that. So it's kind of dependent upon the training year, but to provide a number right now would almost be it would be inaccurate.
Sure, yeah. And I'm guessing there are all kinds of, certified requirements that have to be met as well.
Sure. I mean, one being the bias-based policing training. The Kansas CPOST requires 1 firearms qualification a year. We actually do 2. I mentioned the standardized field sobriety testing, but each officer is also most of them are fairly proactive of not just seeking out what the department offers, but also things that are of interest to them to kind of round out their expertise, so to speak.
Okay, any other questions? Stephanie? Steph, your mic?
Oh my gosh, I keep taking off with that clicking on, sorry. This is Stephanie Littleton. Sergeant Ernst, I just wanted to kind of circle back on the bias-based police training.
Yep.
I guess I would like to see an opportunity, and it'd make most sense if your department's going through it, say, next year, that we wait and, for that in person, that we go through it at that same time, number one. And 2, that maybe that opportunity to utilize a couple of liaisons, or at least one from the community that we provided a couple of names for, to engage possibly in some of that training to partner with the police department. I guess I would like to entertain that.
To be clear, I remember, and I know that you've provided some names, but you were talking about the board participating alongside the officers in the training. Is that what I understood?
Yeah, I mean, if that's possible, so that way you're not having to do separate and doing it, in the same time frame, or even at the same time, and us attending, whichever works best.
Gotcha. And so in speaking with the training captain, it was actually Captain Square on that matter, is his preference would be have our presenters come in and present to the board.
And that's fine. I just didn't want to have to make them do additional if necessary.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
But I would like, once again, the possibility, we've talked some time over the past year or so.
Sure.
Getting, the couple names that I provided, or I'm not sure where Amber Roden would fall into that, since we really haven't talked about, where she stands as a liaison for the city. But anyway, just looking for some of that engagement.
No, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
And so just to be clear on this topic, I know we've bounced around a little bit on things, but I will ideally have some sort of indication or report back at the August 27th meeting about the ability to go take the online bias-based policing training. I intend I've reminded myself to check back, so I just want to make clear what your expectations were of me.
open hearing, we can still attend to other agenda items besides the open hearing? On the 27th? Maybe that's a Brandon question.
I think Brandon's looking at me. I think they're designed to have a public hearing. So it doesn't, if you folks are comfortable, and maybe, and I'm looking at Brandon and/or Tony, if this is acceptable, if I find that this online bias-based policing training is just to send you folks an email saying, hey, it's available, here's the link, and reminding you not to reply all concerning this. And if you've not gone on, and I don't know if it's a KU Blackboard, but there is a kind of an involved process to actually get into the training. But if it's acceptable, and I'm getting a head nod, like almost like a yes from Brandon or Tony, but I would just, once I recognize that it's online, I'll just send you an email saying it's online and providing the link.
Okay.
This way, yeah.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're ready to go to number 7. Are there any other issues that any of the board want to bring up? I see Jane's hand first, and then Stephanie. And then Sanjay.
Sorry, I thought Brandon wanted to discuss his number.
Yes, this is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. Madam Chair, we made an update to the agenda to add an item, and it was listed actually as item number 4 to receive an update on the police study consultant selection process.
Thank you.
Unless did either of the other board members have something different to comment about? Okay, I figured everybody was.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, let's go with number 4 then. The receive an update on the police study consultant and the RFP process that you're going through, and then also that would be the consultant selection process as well, correct?
That is correct. This is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. We are in the process of advertising the RFP, which again is the request for proposals for consultant study of the police department. We did make some revisions to the RFP, and I would be happy to share that that final draft of the RFP that is being advertised with the board. In fact, I probably should have done it in hindsight as an addition to the agenda as well. So I apologize for that oversight, but I will email the board, all of the board members, that final draft, and we were able to make some revisions based on the good feedback that we received from the board members at the last meeting, specifically related to our ability to evaluate the consultant's capabilities to work with large and diverse data sets. And there were 1 or 2 other revisions that we made to the scope of work as well. And so we appreciate the feedback, and I will share that final draft with you. I did want to let you know that it has been advertised now. I believe this is the 2nd week. It's been on our the service that we use, which is called Demand Star. And I have heard from several consultants already inquiring about the RFP. We did conduct a pre-submission meeting actually just this afternoon, and we had a number of consultants attend that. I don't want to divulge that number because I don't want to provide any information that might jeopardize the competitiveness of our selection process, but I was encouraged by the participation in that, and some good questions from those consultants who participated. So that being said, the deadline for consultants to submit is August 17th. So there are several more weeks for consultants to get their proposals to us. We anticipate and I'll describe the selection process at a high level. We anticipate a staff review based on the evaluation criteria that is spelled out in the RFP. And that staff review, the intent of that is to come up with a short list for the consultants that we can then invite to interview with us. And this will all be, unless something substantial changes with the pandemic, this will all be virtual meetings. So we will invite a short list of consultants anywhere from 1 to 3 to interview with us, with our staff team. And then we envision one, very possibly 2 stakeholder teams that would also interview each of the consultants as well. And that would be a process that we would set up and facilitate for those stakeholder groups. Several of the communities and the groups are identified in the, at least in the abstract or more general list that is included in the RFP. And we have yet to extend invitations to each of those individuals or those groups. That will take quite a bit of time. There are several people that we will invite to be involved in the stakeholder groups. And so we will spend quite a bit of time on the phone and email trying to organize all that. It's going to be a big undertaking for myself and for our lucky city management intern, Andrew Davis, who's going to be helping me with that process. But we do think that it will be a good process, an engaging process. And our goal really is to get as many voices engaged in the review of the consultants so that we can then walk away and enter negotiation and clarification for a final scope of work with a consultant that everybody can live with. Maybe not everybody, it might not be everybody's top selection, but at least we will, if we do this process right, we'll have some buy-in going into the actual study. And so that is just a high-level summary. I will keep the board apprised of the process as we go through it. There will be no major milestone before that August 13th date, but by the August 20, or the second meeting in August, we will be able to have a pretty good update for you at that point. I did want to touch base and circle back around. I believe it was Bill who asked the question about the cost of the Allegro study, which was a much different study in nature and scope than what we're doing with this one. This is much more comprehensive, but that cost was $23,350 for the final bill to Allegro. And so that is my update. I did want to, unless there are questions about the actual selection process itself, I would like to discuss with the board how we can get a few of you to participate in our selection process with our stakeholder groups. We have discussed, and we discussed the last time we talked about this, the chair being involved, but I do think that it would be better, and I've received guidance also from the city manager, who is very encouraging that we extend the invitation to up to 3 board members to be involved in our selection process.
This is Stephanie Littleton. I would just guess my first thought would be, Miranda, do you have any thought about, what kind of time frame we're looking at as far as how often we'd be meeting, or just what kind of work would be expected out of that?
Yes, great question. Had it in my notes to talk about and overlooked it. Thank you. This is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. We anticipate running interviews the week of September 7th. So that is a 4-day week. The 7th is Labor Day. And of course, all of this is subject to the availability of consultants and the availability of what inevitably is going to be probably a couple dozen city staff members and stakeholders. But we have circled that week to conduct interviews. I would expect it to be either a half day or a little bit more than a half day commitment. And it would be, like I said, up to 3 consultants that we'd be interviewing. And so we would just do those back to back to back, and then with some deliberation, probably with the group. So we would target 1 day that week of September 7th to ask for that commitment from you.
Any other comments or questions? I apologize for overlooking number 4. agenda item number 4. Brandon, I do have a quick question. You mentioned that you've developed evaluation criteria based on the expectations in your RFP. Can you and this, I don't mean to catch you off guard or anything, but off the top of your head, what would be some examples of the evaluation criteria? I remember certainly looking at it, but in terms of really looking for expertise from the vendors or consultants, what will you be looking for in addition to maybe a couple of examples of expectations?
Yes, this is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. So the proposal provides very specific instructions, or at least relatively specific instructions for what each of the proposals should include, and that includes page limitations as well. And so we are looking for the project team experience, the project approach and methodology, data competency, which was one of our additions since the last meeting, the project timeline, risk assessment, both for controllable and uncontrollable risks to the project, and then past project experience. And I apologize, there's a couple others. The consultant's needs and assumptions for their work, and then as a separate evaluation item, the fee schedule and the maximum costs. And then I do highlight that as being a separate consideration. We will use a cost reasonableness evaluation to differentiate, and we would be very hesitant to recommend a proposal that we do not believe the cost is justifiable or reasonable. But this is a qualifications-based selection process, so we will be looking very much at the qualifications of the consultants as presented in their proposals and through the interview process. Finally, I would point to Section 4 in the RFP. We do have some specific criteria for the selection committees, and that will be the number 1, the consultant's related experience, which would be assigned a total of 10 points. The consultant's proposed approach, including stakeholder engagement, project schedule, and timeline, which would be assigned 10 points. And then, of course, the document went blank on me. So, anyway, does that answer your question?
This is Stan Wilton. The additional, Tanya, would be the consultant's project team, another tangible criteria. So there's 4 things.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, and those will be in the revised report, certainly, that you're going to send to us too, or
Yes.
the revised draft. Okay, final draft. Okay, very good. Okay, any other questions or discussion? Okay, if not, next meeting. I think we've already identified that through our motion, correct?
This is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. I would, Madam Chair, if it's okay, maybe ask for anybody who's interested in participating in that consultant selection process.
Oh, okay. Oh, sure. Okay. Absolutely. In terms of the stakeholder groups that you identified in the process?
Well, in terms of the board members who might be interested in joining us for those interviews.
Okay. Oh, you'd like to know that now. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
And I understand that this is probably catching most of you cold, and you may not have your calendars in front of you, or may not be able to commit to that date right now, or a date that week. So if there's interest and you would like to maybe follow up with me directly, or follow up with me at the next meeting won't really work either.
Right. Okay. So yeah, let's go ahead and have a conversation about that real quickly, if that's okay. Is anyone interested on the board of serving on the stakeholder groups to interview? I guess it would be right. The final up to 3 candidates, the short list. there any interest?
This is Stephanie Littleton, Vice Chair. I would be interested.
And I would be interested as well. This is Tanya Salvini. Okay. Any other interest? No? All right. We're ready to move on. Thank you so much, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
So future meeting dates, I think we know certainly our August dates. And then also, as was mentioned earlier, I believe our dates in October are October 8th, and then the second meeting, I think Sergeant Ernst said that was reserved for carryover meeting is the 21st of October. So do we need to look ahead any more than that? You know, at this point?
Madam.
I think that our next meeting would be in January, correct? But that would be official meetings. We did talk about and have conversations about meeting monthly up to that point too, to address some of the work that the work group has done. And once we move through that process, there could be some other discussions that we need to have. So what's the wish of the board?
And Madam Chair, I might jump in if that's okay to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. I actually scheduled this for discussion really more for my own guidance. In working with other boards, it is common for boards who are meeting on a monthly basis to pick one day out of the month and meet consistently on that date, or two if that's required also, such as like the Planning Commission, for example. And so that makes it more consistent and predictable for people who are following the work of the board and who want to attend the meetings and engage. And so my thought was sort of along the lines of, for discussion, is the board interested in meeting, and I'm just throwing out as a complete hypothetical, the first Monday of every month, or the first and second Monday of every month, and so something along those lines is really what I was looking at. That way we can support you in laying out that schedule and making sure we have dates blocked off, and that we broadcast publicly that those that is the meeting schedule, and people can count on that schedule.
Go, Jane.
Okay, Jane? Mm-hmm.
This is Jane Gibson, board member. Brandon, would it be appropriate then for you to give us some, since you have the calendar of the room, or somebody there has the calendar of the room, maybe you could let us know what's possible. It would save us a lot of time, just picking and choosing, just for you to tell us, nope, can't have that date. Maybe you could tell us what dates are open.
We'll look that up just a moment.
Okay, thank you. Good idea. Do we still want to go ahead and go monthly? I think that was the consensus of the board.
Yeah.
Yes, Sanjay?
Yes, this is Sanjay Mishra, board member. I thought we have decided that we should meet at least monthly till the full report comes through, because it gives the working group a chance to report out, and otherwise it doesn't work as a complete board setup. Plus, given I see some meetings are end of the month, August 27, October 21st, so instead of the first, I would at least pick the second, not the first, because 27th may come very close to 4th or 5th. So the second Monday, Tuesday, and once you pencil it in, then you roll it.
Very good. Jane?
Well, I remain in, this is Jane Gibson, board member, I remain in the camp of people that don't think we need to meet unless we have a reason to meet. We're hoping to deliver this draft after the 27th, because we will have had 2 more weeks to make changes that the board requests. So do we know that we have a reason to meet in September, or do we want to just pick in case we want to meet in September? Is that the idea?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, if we have it scheduled, we can always cancel it to meet the next month. I think Brandon's still waiting on a date.
Kurt, we are just looking at September.
Yeah, and you guys already have October blocked, but if you want to do it's really the second Thursday, it is open to September 10th.
September 10th?
It is open.
Okay. How about November 12th?
Did you hear that, Kurt?
Yeah, that is a Monday. Oh, wait, no, sorry, wrong month, sorry. Open.
Okay, that would be the second Thursday then.
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we go ahead and reserve those?
This is Stephanie Littleton. If I heard right, you're suggesting September 10th on a Thursday?
Yes.
I would have one big opposition to that, and I'm sorry, but Chiefs football is important to me. That is the season opener for the Chiefs as the Super Bowl champions, and that's the first game of the season. I have to speak up for that
one. You do your thing, Stephanie.
That's why the room is available. Everybody else is going to be watching the game.
As I will be.
Okay, well, how about if we do this? We'll look at some dates and send them out. Would that be a really good idea for you to, could you do that, Brandon, please?
This is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. Yes, we can do a poll of the board members. So maybe a doodle poll or something to that effect.
Sure. Yeah.
If the November 12th date works at this point, then we'll go ahead and slot that in, knowing that that is quite a ways out. But for a meeting in September, we'll look at the calendar and we'll send out a poll. It'll most likely come from Bobby Walthall.
Okay, thank you.
And,
okay, go ahead.
And again, Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. And for my purposes, this has been very helpful, and I appreciate the conversation. So I don't need any more guidance at this point.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any other questions, discussion items, anything else? I want to thank the working group, definitely, certainly not in advance. I know you've been working really hard, and I'm really looking forward to the work that you've done. I think we all are, and really looking forward to really dig in and see what we can do to help define ourselves better and play the role that we need to play in making sure that we're meeting the needs, both on the law enforcement side of equity and balance, and also the community needs as well. So thank you all very much. Is there a motion?
This is Stephanie Littleton. I just want to make one quick comment, and I know we have a ways to go yet to speak about the revisions, but I have to just make a comment that I've been very honored to work with Jane and Jane Gibson and Bill Grable on the revisions. It's been quite an honor.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Jane.
Well, of course we can't let that go unremarked because no, it's been a lot of fun, and it's also been very illuminating, and I felt like we worked really well as a team because we all brought different things to the table. So I would want to say the same about Stephanie, working with Stephanie and Bill. It's been great.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all very much, really. Okay, are we ready to entertain a motion? to adjourn?
Stephanie Littleton, first motion. Salute.
Motion, Stephanie has the motion. Is there a second? Jane? I saw your hand go up.
Sure, I'll second this, Jane Gibson.
Very good. All in favor? We'll go down the list real quickly. We'll go with Stephanie.
Stephanie Littleton, aye.
Sanjay?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Tanya? Aye. All right, the vote is unanimous and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tony.
Brendan, thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Sergeant Ernst.
Thank you, Sergeant Ernst.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.